Okay, not the most ideal conditions I want, but at least I got most of this on camera, so now we are going to start with the painting segment of this Let's Build. As you can see, we already have all the pieces here in nice white base coat, which is basically primer. This is kind of important because of the effect we're trying to get. As you can see, I have my yellow paint. I'm going to be using a large brush, and we are going to coat the entirety of the model in yellow paint. Don't worry about any of the white getting through, because that is actually part of the effect that we're trying to get. We're just going to lightly coat the entirety, yes, all of these parts in yellow. Probably the reason why will be made very clear as we go through this build. Now, as I said, the reason why we have a white undercoat and we are painting it in yellow is because we want some of the white to actually be poking through the yellow for the effect we are trying to get later. Now then, again, use a big brush because we are covering a large area, a lot of pieces. So yeah, we'll just jump here to getting all these painted. Okay, as you can see, I have all the pieces here in a nice yellow shade. The coat is not completely even, but that's actually a good thing because we want to have that to achieve the effect we're trying to get. Now then, I have some shading ink here, which I've never really used shading ink before. I've usually just cheated using watered down acrylic, but for this we're going to just use actual ink. Now this is orange. Technically you're supposed to be putting this in red and then yellow ink to get the desired effect, but I couldn't find the proper shade, so I'm just using orange. So we're just going to take it and dab it on our model here. It's going to take a few coats, so yeah, just keep going with the ink. Don't put too much on your brush or else you're going to get something like that. You want to just lightly dab it all over the model until we have our nice burning effect that we want. Should look something like this when you're starting, but as it goes on, the orange effects will start to pop in a bit more. Anyway, we'll go to our next jump cut here. As you can see, we got roughly 2 coats, and it kind of looks like a Cheeto now. Oh well, this is how we're supposed to have this. Now then, we got one more thing to do before we're done, and we are going to put some red on the chest a bit to give it a little bit more of a definition of, well, actually that's looking pretty good. Let's just put the red all over because the orange is good. I think one coat of this crimson should give us just what we need to give it that little extra fire effect that we're looking for. Yeah. So I'll be back after I'm done. And after a day of drying, we have it looking like this. That is a lot more impressive than it was with just the orange. So yeah, 2 coats of orange ink wash, 1 coat of crimson, and we have ourselves a nice magma look to it. And now we gotta cover it up. Well, not all of it, mind you, and please do not mind the sounds coming from upstairs, but anyway, if you're wondering, here is the official artwork, and as you can see, there is a lot of magma detail we have to put in. I'm not going to do that red, that's just the glowing effect. I'm going more from the Kickstarter picture, which I don't have on hand right now, but yeah. Before I turned on the camera, I went ahead and tried to mix up the pigment as close as I can, using a variety of khaki and gray and green to get the effect I want. Now then, before we begin, as you saw from the picture, he has a lot of markings, so we have to be pretty careful as to how we are going to paint this. First things first, we're going to dip our paint. Because we are going to dry brush, we're going to dry brush it just a little bit. Just a little bit on the top here to see what we can get. Yeah. Just want to do that to mark off how the paint's going to work. Oh! Good thing that didn't fall on the model, it only fell on the... Okay, first we're gonna carefully mark right there. Right there. As you can see, we are trying to mark where the glowing bits are. Just gotta be very careful. We also want to make sure that the coat is thin enough that that some of the magma actually goes through the skin. Just gonna be looking at the picture here. I'm bringing this up to my face so I can actually see what I'm doing, but I'm gonna just carefully mark the line where paint. As you can see, I have a section here that's exposed and a section that is painted. That's exactly what I'm trying to get here. I'm trying to get the paint to cover up some areas, whereas I want it to be exposed in others. I'll fast forward to finishing the head and you can see what I'm trying to get. And there is the head so far. As you can see, I left some of the details open so you can see the flaming effect underneath. Not exactly the best way of doing it, but it's close enough. Ooh, come on, stay up, stay up. Anyway, I'm going to take these pieces and carefully dry brush, because this is the heart, so a lot of this is going to be exposed. Careful not to paint the ribs here, because the ribs have to be a completely different color. And yeah, I'll get back to you when I'm done. And as you can see, there is the completed piece so far. Still haven't painted the ribs yet, but the dry brushing makes it look like the lava's going through the skin, whereas I put more of a thick coat on the edges where it's going to be connected to the skin. So there's that. Now for this guy, this piece, we're going to have to be very careful because there are markings on the chest, and some of the lava will be exposed around the back and along the side of the neck. So we are going to just be very careful. And we're going to just dry brush a little around the spine area here. And then use thicker coats as we go up the neck. Dry brushing around these little areas. Not painting the collar here. Leaving areas exposed where the markings are, and dry brushing around this area where the heart is, not touching the heart. We do not want to paint the heart with the skin tone. And we're just going to keep going along the back, just lightly dry brushing around the spine area until we get to the tail, which is going to be more of a solid color. We're also going to mark off all the lines down the arm and along the bicep here. We're also, and as I said, we're going to leave a little area around the neck exposed, like a good half an inch, maybe less. Anyway, once I'm done, I'll show you how that looks. As you can see, now we have the dragon skin all painted with areas exposed where the fire is going to be exposed from, but it's kind of bland, isn't it? Granted, that's somewhat to be expected, but there is a solution to that. We're going to take the pieces that we've painted completely and just lightly dry brush some, I didn't get enough paint on that. Lightly dry brush some green on there, just to give it that little bit of a textured look. Should solve the little problem of making it look bland. Now, when dry brushing, lightly touch the brush onto the surface. Be very careful not to touch the areas you're going to be having exposed lava on. Just lightly dry brush. Don't. Just trying to get into the top details. We're not trying to you see it looks a little better now. Not entirely, we're still a little ways off from getting this completely finished, but yeah, it's going to look a little better when we're done. And now that we're done dry brushing the green, you can look, he has a very sickly green appearance on him. More green than I would like. Maybe I would have gotten a different result if I used tan, but it fits into the story. He's supposed to be a dragon that's in his twilight years, basically looking for a new successor. Anyway, now that we have finished with the skin, and if you'll excuse me, I'm still cleaning my brush, we're gonna now take care of the membrane inside of his wings, which has to be this tan color. We have to be a little careful. Don't want to paint over the fingers, but we're gonna use a little tan to get the effect we need. As I said before, we're going to paint both the front and back. Careful not to paint over the fingers because we want the fingers to be exposed. And I will come back to you after I'm done painting the wings. Okay, the wings are done, for more or less. Not the greatest, but if you're looking for something more professional, tune into a different channel. Anyway, now we are going to paint his nails and his teeth very carefully. We're going to take a fine brush and carefully dot some paint onto each of his teeth, making sure that the flame detail is coming in through the teeth. Looks a little white out in the camera, but yeah, that's his teeth. Can do the same to his rib cage. I'm not doing everything on camera. I'm just gonna show you. This one we want to just put a little bit on the tips. We want to leave the edges exposed in order to get that glowing effect we want. Same on this side. Carefully dip our fine brush. Carefully line in on the center, leaving the edges exposed so that it looks like it's glowing. The toes as well. We want to leave the root here exposed, again to clarify the glowing. Toes are going to take a few more coats than usual, so we'll return to this after one jump cut. Okay, now that we got the whites painted in on the teeth, feet, and the nails, we're going to do a little bit of highlighting using a very fine tip. We're going to dot just a little yellow into each spot to make sure that we get the nice glowing effect that we want. There, that makes his eyes nice and glowing. Also gonna do a little bit of trim on the neck here. Just very carefully along the edge. Excuse me while I'm holding my breath because this is a very delicate procedure. I have to be very careful. Too much and it's just going to look all yellow. Just put it in the middle of every exposed area. And we're also going to dot the eyes inside the thing there. I'll get back to you when I'm done with that. As you can see, we already done the highlights of yellow, hitting up the exposed areas, making them look nice and like they're glowing. But there is one other area we have to address first, and that is the horns. This is the side that's going to be out. So we are also going to lightly trim the center with yellow, just carefully, all the way along the middle. Not going to do the other side, we're just doing this side. That's one. Now we have to do the other. Just very carefully, just along the middle. So we can get a nice glow effect in there. Yeah, that should do the trick. Oh wait, missed one. Hang on a moment. Okay, now that we got that little mix-up fixed, we're now going to deal with the horns. Now then, not going to be the same color as the nail, so I have a little darker khaki that I'm going to dry brush along the edge here, which, oh crud, I'm smudging the... I didn't get enough on that one. Careful. Just want to dry brush around the edge, allowing the shine to get through, and then we're just going to keep coating the edge until it's fully coated. So we're going to look something like that when it's done. Kind of hard to see because my camera doesn't have a zoom, but bear with me. I'm going to jump cut after I paint these. Okay, I got the horns done. I'm going to be a little gentle with this, but brown color with a little glowing effect in the middle. So yeah, that's over with. Now then, we got one more thing we have to do before we call this a finished project, and we gotta just put a little crimson ink on the edges of the wing. Just a light ink wash. And excuse me, but my brush is very dry, so I'm going to have to dab it down a little before I do anything else. Just a little. Don't want too much. Just the very edges of the membrane of the wing. Need to have some make sure to use the tip of your brush as the ink's starting to wear thin so it blends in nicely. There we go. I'm going to be repeating this for the other wing, but we're not done yet. We have one final step. Well, first I gotta seal this, and then we have the final step. And very quickly here, I almost forgot a step. We need to paint the base. This is an optional step, but I do it anyway. Now, as I said before, if you were going to do any sort of complicated flocking or whatnot, you just need this bottom piece. The top piece is what you're going to be doing the flocking on. But since I don't do that, I just glue it together, paint it in black. It's kind of glossy because I couldn't find the proper black primer. I only could find glossy. And we are going to dry brush along the logo. You gotta be very careful because there is text in the middle that we don't want to cover up. I'm going to take a few coats, especially if we want to just get the details. So give me a minute to get this on. It's not going to take long. I can probably show you the whole thing. You can see once we get to the second coat, we're getting a little bit more of a white wash to it, which is what we want, because we want to make sure that logo is nice and visible, picked out in white. And there, that is our first coat. Yeah, the first time I didn't have to jump cut for a painting. Okay, now I need to get a smaller brush here. And now, come on. Sorry, this thing is kind of stuck. There we go. And now we're going to take some black and just carefully trim along the areas to cover up anything that isn't on the logo. This is going to take a while, so I'll just show you a little bit of what I'm doing here. Just covering up the white along the edges of the logo. You're probably wondering why I don't just paint this in white, but It's not really that difficult. And jump cut. And as you can see, that is how it looks like when we're done. I took the liberty and painted over the glossy with the flat so that there wouldn't be any contrast between the two paints on the bottom. The top is being left glossy. Again, I could have avoided this if I could have found some flat black paint, but I really couldn't at the time. Anyway, the last step is that we're going to take the little heart in the center and carefully dab in some pink. You can do red if you want. Pink's fine. It all depends on what you want. And there, the I Heart Poots logo on the bottom of the base is now fully painted and ready to be clear coated. Judging from the gloss, I might need to paint the base a little bit more before I do that, as some of the glossy paint is still kind of peeking through. Anyway, once we get to the clear coating, we are going to go to the final step of this build.